If you didn't know any better, you'd think he was asleep.
There's nothing quite like a hot July in the city to make you beg for the bone-cracking cold of February. But it's not the sweat and the dry rashes that get to me. It's the craziness. The loose cannons just need that one excuse to go off. And there's nothing like a heat wave to light all the wrong fuses. But here I am complaining about the weather, and I haven't even introduced myself. The name's Desmond. Desmond Sale, private investigator. Please, have a seat. I was once one of the city's finest of the force until that fateful night 3 years ago when I had the wrong mug collared for a string of ruthless murders. The judge was just about to lay down a sentence when the unbelievable happened. A murder with the same M.O. The creep that wasted our time was just a fall guy. When we started questioning him back at headquarters, I let him know how intent I was on finding his boss. But I let him know all too well. The next thing I knew, Johnny Fall Guy was on the coroner's beat instead of mine. I was a disgrace to the badge, dishonorably discharged from the city's police department. They never caught the real killer. I didn't have any other skills. That madman on the loose was the only thing I could think of. I'm still searching for the one that got away, but a hot meal and a check to pay the waterworks are still needed from time to time. So I scraped together what money I had, and I rented out this rat hole of an office. It's mostly jealous husbands and wives checking in on their so-called loved ones, but sometimes you get a real whammy of a case. Let me take you back a while, tell you about the 1 in 3-inch heels that have come through my door.
Is this the office of Desmond Sale?
So you can't knock and you can't read. What else can't you do? Oh, you've come to the right place, darling. Have a seat. How may I be at your service?
Well, Mr. Sale.
Oh, call me Des.
If it's all the same, Mr. Sale, I'd rather not.
Well, that's fine by me, but if you're not going to call me that, is there at least a name I can call you by?
My name is Ruth Lanter.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Ruth.
Mrs. Lanter will do just fine.
Very well, Mrs. Lanter. So, as long as we have those formalities out of the way, what can I do for you?
I'm in need of some help, Mr. Sale.
And most people are when they come through my door.
Well, you see, it's my husband. He'd been having some trouble at work, some financial trouble. About a week ago, we got a call at home. My husband was the first to answer the call. When he hung up, he was pale as a sheet. I knew something was wrong, but when I asked him, he told me it was nothing. He told me he left something at the office, grabbed his coat, and he was out the door. I haven't seen him since that night.
I see. Well, why didn't you go to the police?
My husband's work isn't exactly the kind of thing to write home about, Mr. Sale. And frankly, I was too ashamed to speak to the police about it.
Uh-huh. What did your husband do for a living, if you don't mind me asking so?
He always told me that he was a salesman in a men's clothing store, but he refused to talk about his work. So one day I followed him to his real job.
And what would that be?
I can't be entirely sure. All I know is he would go to the same gentleman's club every day for a week.
Well, I'm sure it's safe to say your husband wasn't moonlighting, if that's what you're worried about.
I'll thank you to keep the comedy to yourself, Mr. Sale. He would always be there from 10 in the morning until 6 at night.
Sounds to me like he had a steady job. What club was it, anyhow?
Oh, I don't remember the name exactly. It was some gin joint on the corner of 3rd and Irving. John's or Jack's or something like that.
Jerry's?
Yes, that's it. Do you know it?
I'll do you one better. I know Jerry. It's been a while since I've seen him, so I figure a visit may be in order. And while I'm there, I'll ask about your husband.
Thank you, Mr. Sale. You may need this. It's a picture of my husband. Now, in regards to payment, I'm sure you have your necessary charges.
Well, that I do, Mrs. Lanter. I'll take your case on a 3-day retainer. It's $300 a day plus expenses.
I understand. I can also imagine you're not the kind who takes checks either.
Just as a precaution, Mrs. Lanter. It's nothing against you, but I find it's best to work face-to-face with old Andrew Jackson rather than a scrap of paper that'll bounce its way off of the Wells Fargo wagon.
That's perfectly all right. This should cover you for 1 week. Aren't you going to count it?
Never in front of a customer. Never in front of a woman. If you don't mind me saying so, I'll be waiting until you're twice as far away before I open it up.
Thank you, Mr. Saga.
Please, call me Dad.
Perhaps some other time. Good day.
So there I was, $2 grand richer from a $100 case. I had nothing else to do that day, so I figured I may as well give old Jerry a visit. Wasn't about to head out the front door. I didn't want Mrs. Lanter tailing me the same way she did her husband. Besides, I could see her waiting on the other side of the door, taking her time. Couldn't say I blamed her. I grabbed my coat, made sure Bessie was loaded, and hopped out the window onto the fire escape, closed the window, and made my way to the streets below. The heat is more irritating than it is unbearable. I'd have left my coat at the office if it wasn't lined with Kevlar in just the right places. I wasn't lying when I told Mrs. Lanter that I knew Jerry. If the madman on the loose was the thorn in my side, Jerry was the weed in my garden. He's what you might call a legitimate businessman. The kind of guy who, when you ask him what he does for a living, tells you, well, when you ask a guy like that what he does for a living, he tells you,
I do what I need to get done for those who need it.
when what he really means is,
I do what needs to get done to those who are asking for it.
Jerry was a regular on my rap sheet, but he always found some way of getting by. Whether it was some wise guy playing patsy, a smart-mouthed lawyer, or the right amount of Lincolns and the right amount of pockets. We had yet to ever get a proper conviction on the guy. Would you listen to me saying we like I still had a badge clipped to the inside of my coat? The city's criminal underworld knows all about my mistake, and there's no one who likes to wave it in my face more than Jerry. I'd have to keep my cool if I wanted to get anything out of it, especially if I was going to visit the lion in his own den. About half a block away, I could hear the buzzing of Jerry's neon signs already. I walked up to the club's entrance and knocked on the heavy oak doors.
How many in your body, Bob?
Well, just myself, if the bar's open.
Right this way. I'll ask you to check your coat, your hat, and any firearms you may be carrying today.
No problem. I wasn't exactly comfortable giving up Bessie, but even with her, I was outgunned in Jerry's. I made my way onto the main floor of the club. The bar was quiet, which would make getting the bartender's attention a lot easier. I called her down my way.
What can I get for you, sugar?
A gin and tonic, and a few minutes of your boss's time, darling.
Well, I'm the day shift manager. How can I help you?
I meant your real boss. Tell Jerry there's a man with a mustache here to see him.
Sure, fella. Just give me a sec. Hey, boss. There's a man out here with a mustache. He says he's already got one.
That sounds fine to me.
He also says your drink is covered.
Thanks. No, here's to you, beautiful. Say, darling, what kind of gin did you...
Slow